in your business can deal with this current sea change that we're going through? I mean, very difficult economic time and, fragmented media landscape, ad clutter, all that kind of stuff. Big question, but.
Thanks, Mitch.
This is really a Mitch question too, because he has such an incredible grasp on this real big sea change we're going through right now. What Mike and I discovered in the book is, and we've always kind of known this, but as we did our research, it became more and more clear, is that whenever a new medium arrived on the scene, the ad industry would take its old skill set from the medium before it and apply it. So for example, when radio appeared, all you heard were really bad print ads on radio because they didn't have a radio skill set yet. And it took them some time to kind of figure out what all the wonderful aspects of radio were. Then when television appeared, they just moved all of, the Jack Benny show and En Masse and Bob Hope right over to television. And really, it was television, it was radio at work on television. So I think that's probably what's happening a lot now, is we're in the diaper stages of the internet, and we're really struggling and not knowing quite how to do it because we're bringing old skill sets to this new industry. I think that's probably the biggest thing that's holding us back. Am I right, sort of, about that, Mitch?
Yeah, totally. I believe that the channel in and of itself is fundamentally, though, different. I actually don't think it's necessarily a new media channel at all. I think it's a different platform. I think that people have, prior to the internet, been passive with their media. And I think because they're initiating, whether it's clicking with a mouse or touching with an iPhone or whatever it might be, that because they have that immediate relationship, I believe that it changes their relationship with passive media. I think that that's sort of one of the things that we're trying to grapple through, because you're right, what we're essentially doing is using traditional ways and we're adapting them for the digital channel, but I don't think we're really, as marketers, stopping to appreciate the fact that the channel is fundamentally different and it's changing who we are. One of the stories I tell is we do a lot of these surveys because we're trying to figure out if internet usage is moving the way it's moving, how come the ad dollars aren't there? Because online advertising will account on a good day 6 to 7%, maybe in Canada 10 to 12, if the brand's really hot. And yet TV sort of stagnating, radio unfortunately tremendously down, print also down. I think this was the first year that interactive advertising surpassed radio advertising, so there's that shift there. And if you think about that, what we're doing is going out and saying to people, okay, so why isn't the money in interactive? And so they've done a couple surveys, and one of the surveys they did, they asked people, it's a great question, they said, while watching TV, what other things are you doing? And 40% of the people answered that they were sleeping. And it's like, because you sit there as a new media guy going like, okay, they're going to say they're online. They've got their laptops and their Blackberries. I'm like, online texting, and no, they were sleeping. And so you go back to Wanamaker and you think, if half of my advertising works, I just don't know which half. And then you layer in 40% might be sleeping. And then you stop and go, okay, new media guy, he's going to be critical of the old channel. And that's actually not what's happening. When they actually kept probing, what they realized is that because the media channel is passive, that their actual brains physiologically are shutting down. They're just going to sleep. They're just not, because they're not the ones who are initiating it. And so I think that you're totally right in terms of being in that diapers. I call it the amoeba phase. You're just a bloody amoeba. You have nowhere to go yet. But I don't think it's the creative. I think it's actually the channel. And we haven't figured out how do we communicate in a channel that's not one way or two way, but that's group. You got all these individuals who can express and publish and share and do this stuff. I think that's the sort of bigger thing for me.
And so how do you both approach, just from a strategic point of view, how do you bring the client along with you when you find yourself in a rapid, how do you convince people to take that step to do something different? You talked about the great client who's willing to say, I trust you. Are there strategies that you have for getting that?
You have to remember this about agencies. They are on the line with their clients to offer up the newest, most exciting ways to communicate with their target market. That is a mandate of an agency, is to ferret out what would be the newest, most interesting way to connect. So I think that's probably, it takes a little bit of an argument to get a client there, but I think it's not the biggest argument you're going to have. As Mitch says, the problem is technology isn't an idea. Right? Technology is a medium, it's a channel, it's not an idea. You still need a great creative idea to put on top of that. And that's still, for me, when it comes right down to it, that is what it's all about agencies, what they do, what clients should value about us is our ability to create really wonderful creative ideas that connect with people, that people talk about, that people will sit through. That's what it's all about in the end.
So I had an interesting scenario a couple of days ago where I sat down with a very senior client person for a very traditional agency that we all know and love. And when they were talking to me about this exact sort of scenario, I was sort of sitting there, I guess the way a dog looks at people when they talk, and I was sort of like, what? And he was like, you're not sort of like feeling me, are you? And I was like, no. And he's like, why? And I said, because we don't get those calls. Like the calls I get are big brands saying, we understand that this new channel exists, we are clueless, take us to the promised land. And I actually think that that relationship, again, is so different from a peer-to-peer model or sometimes slave to master, where the brands come in and the chief marketing officers that have been doing TV buys and radio buys forever, and it's really hard to one-up them other than your creative portfolio. But in my world, it's more than the creative portfolio, it's the actual how do you get it done. They have no clue and no resources. And I think what's interesting from the new world is that even when you layer that in to look at traditional ad agencies, the way that they are fundamentally built to serve those clients for TV, radio, print has nothing to do with my world. You stand with a client and say to them, hey, listen, we're going to build a site, it's going to take 6 to 7 months. Like a traditional agency, forget it. They don't want to have the overhead of tech people. They don't want to have anything that's in development and production for 7 months. I mean, that's not how they make money. And so I think that, Terry speaks so brilliantly about this idea of that gap or the chasm. And it's so big right now between brand knowledge, agency relationship, and then traditional agencies and people who get the channel, I hate saying get it, but sort of understand how to maneuver in it and make it work. So I think that more often than not, what we're seeing is clients are coming to us and saying, lead strategy. Like in a world where most people's first brand interactions happen at a search box, true, like why are you letting a print campaign lead the strategy?
It's funny you talk about the amount of time it takes to do what you do now. It's 7 months to get a website up. I remember a long time ago, my wife and I were having a custom piece of furniture made, our first ever, for our house. And we're sitting across from this wonderful craftsman, and I said, how long will it take to build this bookcase? And he said, well, probably like, 8 or 9 weeks. And I'm like, what? 8 or 9 weeks? I said, are you kidding me, pal? I said, you know what I can do in 8 or 9 weeks? I can put an entire television campaign from zero on the air in 2 weeks. You're picking up what I'm putting down here, right? And later my wife says to me, that bookcase is going to be beautiful, and that's the reason most advertising sucks.